This is the IBJ podcast for the week of Monday, June the 9th, 2025, brought to you by Taft. I'm your host, Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Doug Boles already had his dream job as president of Indianapolis Motor Speedway since 2013. Then Roger Penske, owner of both IMS and the IndyCar series, asked him to be president of IndyCar following the departure of Jay Fry in February. The pitch? Boles would retain his first job while also taking the second. Quote, "It wasn't something that I expected," Boles said in this week's edition of the IBJ podcast. "When Roger Penske calls you and says, 'I need your help,' you don't usually say no. You say, 'Yes, sir. How can I help?' And then you get on board and you start figuring it out." A few months later, early in the morning after qualifying for the Indy 500 on May 18th, Boles called Penske to inform his boss that he felt it was necessary to ratchet up the severity of penalties against two Team Penske drivers, including two-time defending champion Josef Newgarden, by placing them at the very back of the field. Quote, "It was not the phone call I wanted to make," Boles said. Nor was it the only difficult conversation Boles would have with IndyCar teams about costly penalties by the time the Indy 500 victory banquet rolled around on May 26th. Quote, "This month was probably the most physically and emotionally draining and taxing month that I've had since I've been IMS president," Boles told IBJ. These have been the highest profile decisions to date in Boles' tenure as IndyCar president, as he works on implementing Penske's larger vision. Most importantly, that means bringing together IMS and IndyCar to work more as a single unit and leverage their strengths. It also means working with Fox, IndyCar's new broadcaster, to find ways to build the audience. It means working with promoters and sponsors. All of these topics are on the table in this wide-ranging podcast, as well as emerging efforts to improve inspection of cars and to create an independent officiating board that would operate completely outside the Penske organization to quell concerns about conflicts of interest. Boles also shares his take on the need for the annual irritant shared by many local fans, the TV blackout of the live Indy 500 broadcast. Here's our conversation. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the podcast Doug Boles, the president of Indianapolis Motor Speedway since 2013 and the president of the IndyCar series since February of this year. Doug, thank you for making time today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So my first question is, why do you have two full-time jobs? Why were you interested in taking on all the responsibility of being president of IndyCar while continuing to be president of the Speedway?
You know, that's a great question, and I kind of often ask myself, why do I have two full-time jobs? And certainly my wife asks that the few minutes that she gets to see me as I'm not at the house nearly as much as I used to be. You know, I think it just came down to the series was making an adjustment and a change, and that happened in February. And Roger called and asked if I would be available to really help pull things together. The idea behind it was the Indianapolis 500 can't survive without the series, and the series can't survive without the Indianapolis 500. So to the extent that we can pull everybody together, both at the Speedway and at IndyCar, it really gave us the best chance to succeed as one big business instead of two small ones. So that's really been the focus, and it's been an interesting 90-ish days so far.
Is president of IndyCar a job that you have been interested in or hope that you eventually would be able to move into?
No, I think it's probably the right answer. I mean, I felt like I had the greatest job in the world at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, especially with the Indy 500 being part of our schedule and all the other things that we were able to do here. Obviously, very interested in the IndyCar series and have been involved in a lot of the operation of it just on the periphery anyway. But never was something that I aspired to or thought was even in the cards. I really felt like I was in the spot where I was meant to be. So it was a little bit of a not surprise isn't the right word, but it wasn't something that I really expected, and then it all came together in February.
Was that an offer that you felt like you couldn't refuse, or
When Roger Penske calls you and says, "I need your help," you don't usually say no. You say, "Yes, sir. How can I help?" And you get on board and you start figuring it out. So that really, I don't think there wasn't any thought process to it. The phone call came and we sort of organized things really quickly over the course of a few days. And yeah, no, there's not really an opportunity to say no. I don't think.
So I'll go back to the Indy 500. We've spoken a couple times, and my impression is that for you, the entire month of May is like Christmas. It's like you have a
Yeah, I
home,
mean,
you have a home that seats 350,000 people, and then you're the host. It's a ridiculous amount of work. You have to be available 24/7. You have to provide customer service to about a third of a million people. But for you, it's a dream job. How much different was the month of May for you this year?
well, first of all, it is Christmas. That the month of May for me and for most of us that work here, frankly, we work here because we love that event so much, and it is a second Christmas for most of us, and there is a little bit of depression at some level when it's over for all of us. It's a lot of work. People ask us all the time, "What do you do the rest of the year?" And it's like, hang on a minute, we just hosted the second largest city in the state of Indiana at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It takes some planning and putting the team together and kind of working through all of it. So for most of us, we get out of it and you think, "Oh man, that was great," but it's sort of depressing because you got to wait 365 days a year to do it again. Um, so so it really is. It really is Christmas Day for all of us. And, we have a great group of people. So the 24 hours a day that we work, it's because all of us kind of do that. And we trust each other with what we're going to do. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to have an amazing team that just really knows how to execute. So then I can focus on, problems and supporting people and promoting to the extent that I can get out and promote. But when you added the two together, I kind of thought maybe erroneously thought going into the month of May, this is going to be an easier month than it had been ahead of time because all of the IndyCar stuff and all the Speedway stuff all together for 3 weeks here at the Speedway versus, where we are at St. Pete and you go to Thermal, all the different races we were doing on the IndyCar side. And it was probably the most challenging May that I've had in terms of trying to figure out how to use my time and frankly to use my strengths. We had some challenges in qualifying that changed the conversation really. And I had to take off my promoter hat and really put on my lawyer hat, was challenging to switch back and forth. So I think for this month was probably the most physically and emotionally draining, taxing month that I've had since I've been president for, I guess, 13 500s now.
Okay. I'll get back to there in a second, but I do want to talk about what your duties are now as president of IndyCar.
Yeah. So the part of the reason I think Roger was interested in me taking on this job was to be able to kind of help leverage the new Fox television relationship, be able to work with our promoters to get those other events. So we have 15 events outside of the Indianapolis market to make up our 17 events in the series. So working with those promoters to help them promote, to help build those events and turn them from races into events, some of the things that I think are really more in my wheelhouse. But part of it also is having the competition and operations team reporting to me. I spent 8 years on the team side before, so it's not like I'm unfamiliar with the team aspect or frankly the technology and the competition side of things. But it's really not. My strength tends to be more on the promotion side. So we reorganized both the Speedway and IndyCar a little bit to allow me to do both. The IMS team really took on a lot of the work. I probably did 30% of what I normally would do at the Speedway, and the team picked up the other pieces, and then made some reorganization inside IndyCar as well. So just managing comp and ops, working with promoters, working with the Fox television side of things, thinking about what's the new car going to look like in the future, what's the new engine format going to be like in the future, working with the sponsorship team on how we grow in the partnerships that are investing in our series. It's just thinking through rules. A lot of those things. It really is. It's hard to describe. It's not just one thing, right? It's the whole breadth of the organization, and trying to add that into my passion every day to get up and talk from the mountaintops about how this is the greatest racetrack in the world. How do you promote the things that go on here at the Speedway? It's been a little bit of a balancing act to try and figure out how to shift the weight a little bit to one side without falling off of the high wire.
For folks who just know you more as a promoter, quickly remind us about the 8 years you spent on the team side. What were you doing?
Yeah, so I was one of the founders of Panther Racing and was the chief operating officer there. I actually helped put the team together from concept in 1997. We first started racing in 1998. My partners were a local car dealer named Gary Pettigo, a television executive named Terry Lingner, the Colts quarterback Jim Harbaugh, along with a longtime chief mechanic John Barnes. So we put the team together, and I was the chief operating officer for and co-owner of that company really from the fall of '97 until I sold my piece of the company in 2007. I actually quit working there full time after the 2005 season. We won 2 championships and 15 races and an Indy Lights championship. Indy Next now is what it's called. So have been on that side of things. So I think that's a helpful piece when I'm having interactions with teams and others. They at least know I've been on that side, and often, they're talking about expenses and changes we make and how that impacts those teams. So at least I can see it from that angle. So I think that's one of the reasons that I think Roger was comfortable in asking me to do some IndyCar stuff, because it's not completely unfamiliar to me.
Was Roger specific about a specific mandate? Did he say to you, here's what we need you to focus on right now?
I don't know if it's a specific mandate, but I kind of touched on it. I mean, really what he wanted to do, he said, I need you to come in and help pull these 2 organizations together so we're all going in the same direction and we're leveraging the strengths of each. So that's really been the biggest challenge, I think, that he set for me, was just pull the organization together and let's figure out how we work as one. And you see it even beginning at St. Pete. You'll see times where the IndyCar team is on the road, and a lot of the IMS staff will come on the road to help the IndyCar team, and vice versa. So really trying to get everybody to work together. Because as strange as it sounds, people do ask that question: what do you do the rest of the year at the Speedway? Well, we have 140 days a year where we're on track. We have other events. Some of those events happen on the same, at the same time as an IndyCar event on the road. So it is pretty easy for us both to kind of take a path and sort of forget about each other and not support each other. And at the end of the day, the most important thing we have as the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is the IndyCar series, because it is the feeder. It's the foundation for, what creates the Indy 500. So part of it was just trying to find a way to pull us all together. And then the other one was, we got to think about the future. Where are we going? Or the other two, we got to think about the future, where we go, and let's figure this car and engine format out. And then we've got this great new partner in Fox. We got to leverage the Fox relationship. We got to make it successful. We've got a 3-year partnership with them. So let's really drill in and figure out how to grow that. So I'm on the phone at least, I'd say every day, but that's at least 4 days a week with somebody from Fox, thinking through how are we working together as a unit to grow that relationship. So those would probably be the 3 things that he was most focused on. The first of which was, let's pull everything together and operate as one.
Knowing what you know now after this year's 500, are you going to approach it differently next year?
I don't know that I'd approach it differently. I just hope we don't have the bumps in the road that we had this year, that really caused me to almost completely walk away from my promoter side of things. I mean, just really had to kind of take that hat off and really think about shoring up the competition side of things. So I don't know that I'd approach it different. I guess I'd be more cautious in knowing that you may get some wrenches thrown at you that you weren't expecting.
Okay, let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. This is the IVJ Podcast.
Taft, today's modern law firm. With more than 800 attorneys in 8 primary Midwest markets and the District of Columbia, we provide solutions to the business issues facing middle market and emerging companies alike. We do this through a highly collaborative and inclusive team approach. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
Okay, we're back with this week's edition of the IBJ podcast and my conversation with Doug Boles about his dual role as president of both Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the IndyCar Series. So let's look at the last 3 weeks real quick, just to remind folks. So on qualifying weekend of the 500, Josef Newgarden and Will Power were penalized and sent to the back row of the grid for illegal modifications, as I recall. After the race, Marcus Ericsson, who finished second, Kyle Kirkwood and Callum Ilott were penalized for failing post-race tech inspections. A few days later, Scott Dixon and Graham Ray Hall received penalties for unapproved engine changes before the 500. And then after the Detroit Grand Prix, Santino Ferrucci learned that he would be penalized for failing post-race tech inspection. I have to admit, I don't cover IndyCar on a day-to-day basis, but that seems like a lot. Now, those are just the penalties I know. Is this a sign that IndyCar has decided to get more aggressive in policing violations of series rules, particularly for the cars?
So the engine one, the engine penalties are not uncommon. Those are you see those, and we'll see more of those as the year goes. So it's less. That's a pretty common one in the sense that the way the rules are, each engine manufacturer, Honda and Chevy, is allowed to supply 4 engines throughout the year per driver. And oftentimes, if you have an engine failure, and Scott Dixon had an engine failure like 3 laps into the beginning of the season, you knew at that point in time, at some point in time, he's going to have to use a 5th engine. Once you go to that 5th engine, you get a grid penalty. And that you'll see 6 to 10 drivers will deal with that across the season. It's unusually early for us to have them. So that's sort of that's standard. That just is part of what happens. The reason behind that rule is you're trying to encourage the engine manufacturers to build engines that last longer, which helps keep costs down. So that's what that's there for. So that one's sort of separate. On the others, I think it was just really trying to focus on, especially with the 2 Andretti cars and with the 2 Penske cars, it was really trying to focus on, we have a rule or we have rules for certain things that, on the car that say you have to use them as supplied. So Dallara is our manufacturer of the car. They supply you a part. You have to put it together and use it exactly as it's supplied. And those teams chose to modify them in some way. And you can argue whether it gave a performance advantage or not. The problem with getting into that argument, is there a performance advantage? Did they do it on purpose? That's an argument that we don't want to have. The reason those rules are there, or those parts are there to be used as supplied, is so we don't have to argue about that. So I don't know in the past how strict the series had been on those sort of violations, but for us, especially when it happens at the Indianapolis 500 and it happens so publicly, I didn't feel like I had a choice but to say, guys, look, the rule is the rule, and for the integrity, especially of the Indianapolis 500, we're gonna be really strict in the way we apply that rule. There's not any gray in it. But to have those challenges, especially on qualifying weekend, which is our second biggest weekend maybe of the year, and then on race day or with 2 Andretti cars, was really challenging. And the most challenging thing I did all month was pick the phone up on the morning after qualifying to call my boss, who at that time I'm not calling him because he's my boss. I'm calling him because he's the team owner. Say, hey, by the way, we're taking your 2 cars from yesterday and we're putting them at the back of the grid. Those are not fun conversations. The Santino Ferrucci one after Detroit, the car met weight, but the driver ballast didn't, and that's a inside baseball thing. But the reason that driver ballast piece is important is because we're trying to equalize all the drivers' weight. So you can imagine Santino weighs 130 and other guys weigh almost 200. So you're trying to create a way that you say, okay, the driver weight is going to be the same. So some people have to add weight, some people have to take it away. It has to be right in this specific spot. Otherwise, it can impact the performance of the car. And so again, that was one of those black and white rules. And I grew up, AJ Foyt was my racing hero. So to have to penalize, in the course of a couple of weeks, you penalize one of the most famous names in racing in Andretti. You penalize your boss and most famous names in racing in Penske, and then have to call your racing hero and say, hey, by the way, So yeah, it's been a tough time, but hopefully the teams know that you just got to come to the tech pad with cars that are legal. We can't help it when they come through and they've missed on a rule, regardless of the intent.
So should I not take from this that the car inspections are now more thorough? Because it sounds like you are working towards a system that will make the inspections at least more automated or more thorough.
Well, I think at some point in time, we'll be able to use much more scanning. We did some scanning experiments after the 500 to see where they are. These cars have been around so long that scanning's hard. They're not reference points put in them. Teams are allowed to make some modifications. So, I mean, I think in the next car, the future generation of IndyCar will be able to really use scanning. Scanning isn't instantaneous either, though. So it would make the make the tech process a little bit longer. I don't think we're being more thorough. I just don't think for a period of time that the series was treating black and white as black and white. And I think, obviously the way the Penske attenuator situation played out really in front of everybody on national television, it was an opportunity to reset and say black and white's black and white. And we just, especially with those parts that you must use as supplied, that really means what it says. You got to use them as supplied. We also offer an opportunity for teams if they think that it doesn't go together right, or they have an idea to modify the part that's not supposed to be modified. We have a public meaning inside the paddock, where a team can say, hey, we think we need to do X, Y, and Z, or can we do X, Y, and Z to these parts? And the second rule in our rule book basically says, if the rule doesn't explicitly say it's okay, ask. And if you don't ask, you take the risk that at some point in time we may say, hey, that's not the intent of the rule. So, we give the teams an opportunity to ask on questions like that, especially on those supplied as rules.
So tech inspections previously have just been eyeballing the car.
No,
you might be moving towards scanning.
No, there's templates that go on the car. I mean, it's a significant process. But it's more manual than it is through the scanning technology that you can have. So it's and we do some laser ride hiding and some other things. So it's a full on process with the right templates, and it isn't fully automated is really the only difference. And like I said, we had a really good test with the first 4 cars across the finish line in the 500. We took the cars and spent 3 days just working through some scanning and trying to verify the profiles of the cars compared to the profiles that the Dallara CAD has for what a car should be like. We pulled in, and then we all pulled in a 5th car that was basically a brand new car that hadn't been sold yet, scanned that to try and compare it to where the cars are now, and to figure out how we can begin to use that to ensure that teams are within the rules. And there's also probably a way on the front end where we can scan parts at Dallara before they ever go to a team to just know, okay, here's the scanning of this part. So we know it fits the right rules and configurations, and it'll help us in the future when we know a part on a car, we can scan, okay, has this part been modified? Here's what it was like when it left Dallara. A lot of ways that we can do that in the future.
Yeah. You went over this a bit on I think it was the Wednesday press conference. There's so many press conferences, I can't remember now. After Newgarden in power had initially been penalized for being placed 11th, or been penalized and then placed 11th and 12th in the grid.
Yeah.
You said something to the effect of you almost immediately began to question that decision. Can you take me through those 24 hours again real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Sunday happens. I actually was I was here until like 1:00 in the afternoon. Then I took a helicopter to West Lafayette because our youngest was graduating from Purdue, and then came home because I needed to be home for the Fast 12, and then I was going to do our family celebration dinner that night, which ultimately I didn't. I missed all the family celebration because of what happened. But yeah, the rule as it stated, if you qualify and you're disallowed or something happens, you go to the back of that qualifying group, and then you just start the race. So like 8:30, I guess, on Sunday night, we held a little impromptu media scrum outside of the tech trailer, and where we said, okay, these cars are going to go back to 11th and 12th, which is basically what the rule kind of dictates. And literally, as I turned around to walk off, I thought, this is a hard one because it is a rule that says you can't modify these parts. You're essentially telling the team, you're going to be 11th and 12th, which you might have qualified 11th and 12th anyway, had we let you qualify, right? You weren't guaranteed to be anything worse. So you, at some level, there wasn't a penalty. And we started talking it through, and literally the next morning is when we said, look, this is a big enough thing on a big enough stage that we need to find a way to make it make sense. And that's when we moved the cars back to 32nd and 33rd.
Let me interject real quick. I think you said during the press conference, you couldn't sleep Sunday night.
I didn't sleep at all Sunday night. It was, I stay here at the racetrack, and I spent a lot of time just in the dark, kind of walking around under the lights of the pagoda, back in bed.
Oh, you were outside on the track and you were just pacing?
No, I'm in the backside, between where I say I never actually went on the track, but just kind of walking around trying to get my thoughts. Yeah, my thoughts about me. And finally, it was just one of those things where early in the morning, I called Mark and said, hey, here's what I'm thinking. And then he came in the office and we chatted it through, and it really was in my mind still, it was the right thing to do on that stage, given that mistake. It wasn't just like Scott McLaughlin, who crashed in the morning and was able to, he was part of the Fast 12, but he was just unable to make it because he couldn't get his car repaired in time. That's really what that rule is set for, is in situations like that, or if you don't show up, or if it's, whatever else. This one to me felt like it had to be different. And that's where we got to 32nd and 33rd.
And then you called Roger.
I did.
Tell him what you decided. So
yeah, I called Roger from sitting in my car. I drove down Main Street to one of the coffee shops in Main Street early to get a coffee. And just right before I went in to get a coffee, I thought I'm just going to call him now. And I don't know, it was 7 something in the morning probably. And just called and told him where we were. And he just said, yep. You have to do what you have to do. I mean, he's really been great about, he knew that conversation was not a Doug's calling his boss of the IndyCar series or the Speedway conversation, but Doug's calling for a different reason. And, but it was still not the call I wanted to make first thing in the morning.
Yeah. So for people out there who have bad news to tell their bosses, what advice do you have?
I don't know, lots of prayer, I guess. I don't know. I think just being honest and being able to have the facts so that you can walk through with them and the reasoning behind it, right? And so for me, it was just a really methodical conversation about, okay, here's what happened, here's what I think that the appropriate response should be, here's how I got to that point. I think is probably the best advice there is.
This was such a shocker to everybody. And midway through the press conference, I was like, Mark Miles could be up on the dais with Doug to really shows, a sense of solidarity in this decision. But you went up there by yourself. I mean, was that just a no-brainer for you?
Yeah, and I think it's less confusing too when there's just one voice in these situations. So for us, I don't think we ever even thought about it being more than me on the front end. I'd kind of worked through all of it. So I was fine. I was fine with that. I mean, and I didn't feel like I didn't have support from Mark, because I certainly did. But I think in a lot of ways it's just less confusing to have. I represent both the Speedway and IndyCar. Mark's Penske Entertainment, so that I think it worked fine.
Okay. So the Newgarden power penalties initially revisited concerns that a lot of teams have had about potential conflicts of interest for Roger owning the series, the Speedway, and one of the series' most successful teams. What have you been considering as far as creating a tougher firewall between Roger Penske and the operations of the IndyCar series?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this. I even said this in that press conference. I mean, first of all, I've never been in a situation in the 5.5 years that I've worked for Roger now where I've felt like Roger was asking us to do something that was tainted by his involvement in the team. For me, it's in fact, he's stayed up pit stand, stayed out of the way, rules making, all of that. So I've always been really comfortable. I also 100% understand the optics situation, and so does Roger. And when you have penalties, which race teams have it, I mean, it happens in the sport at some level. We give penalties every race for things that happen during the race. Too many men over the wall, hitting equipment. There's just a lot of things that happen. So and those are not nearly as public as some of these have been. And so basically every team gets those. But when Team Penske gets them, or doesn't get a call, right? If there's a call that isn't made during a race and it's a Penske car involved, people think, oh, well, somebody must have decided that Roger Penske's team shouldn't get a penalty. And I think if anything, he's under more scrutiny than the other teams. And certainly now he is. But I think it's also important that we change the optics, because perception oftentimes is reality, and we have to fix that. So we've been looking at, and have been looking at for over, really since the very, very end of last year, how can we create a completely independent officiating board? By officiating, I mean the tech process and the race control piece, that what happens on the racetrack. And so I think we've gotten to a place where we have a pretty good framework, which I think in the next couple of weeks we'll start sharing with our teams. But it has to be something where it's going to probably end up having to be funded by IndyCar. So you have to create some firewall between the money and who actually operates the officiating side of things. So there needs to be probably some sort of independent organization that's elected by somebody that has nothing to do with us, meaning IndyCar or Penske Entertainment or Roger Penske. And then they're the ones that are really responsible for hiring the people that actually do the work, so that there is a true firewall. So it's a little more complicated, but I think we can make that happen. And honestly, I think it's probably good for the sport. It's good for the teams, and it's certainly good for Team Penske and Roger, because it can eliminate that optics situation.
I know we're a little bit over. Can I ask you real quick, how are things going with Fox?
Fox has been an amazing partnership. It's really, I tell people this a lot. When the announcement happened last year that we were going to switch to Fox, it wasn't probably a week before I was driving to some race somewhere. I can't even remember where. And my phone rings, and it's a number from California that I don't know. And I answered the phone, and it's Eric Shanks, the president of Fox Sports. And ever since then, I've talked to him. I probably talked to him twice or three times a week. And then the producer I talked to quite a bit throughout the week as well, with just ideas and how can we grow the sport? What do you think about X, Y, and Z? It's the investment beyond what they put on TV, the investment in brain power that they've got alongside us to think about how do we really, how can we change the sport? How can we add things to pre-race? What are the things we can do to really amp up the excitement around the event? So they're not just a broadcast partner; they're really a thought process partner that's working alongside us to really, and they truly want to grow the sport. When we announced Michael Strahan as the pace car driver, we did it in their NFL on Fox on Sunday studio, and I went out there not because I wanted to meet Michael Strahan or any of that. I wanted to go out there and see if the passion we felt from Eric Shanks and kind of his top group was cascading down through the whole organization, and to get there and just see the excitement that even the camera guys and the folks working the floor there had for the IndyCar series. You could tell that this wasn't just Eric; this was a whole culture thing. They were all in on making IndyCar better. So, I don't think we could ask for a better partner. Our local Fox affiliate just blew it out of the water in terms of just helping us, tell stories throughout the month. It's been a fantastic partnership.
You don't have to go super far on the internet to find haters who are don't like things about the broadcasts.
Yep.
What do you think they're doing well, and what do they need to work on?
One of the biggest complaints I think we heard from before was we had a TV partner, but you didn't know about it when you turned on TV. So Fox has been able to leverage all of their other sports properties and events and really help promote our series and our events, and especially around the 500. So I think they're really, really strong in that. I think they're really strong in some of the new technology they brought. So the driver's eye cam, I think, is something that we've not used before, that are, well, not in a long time, but not to this extent. That's been really great. Some of the TV angles, the drone usage has been really strong. So there's a lot of that I think makes the production better. You're always going to get people who don't like the commercials. That's a thing that we heard even at NBC. You're in commercial too much. And I know Fox does a good job of trying to use the side by side to help do some of that. The challenge is it's the commercials that fund the sport and that allow it to be on TV. So I get the frustration when you're watching something and then, there's always, when we've got personalities that are in the sport, that are broadcasting the sport, even, in May we bring people in, especially polarizing personalities. You get fans that really think, why is that person here? Why shouldn't you use this person, or that person's a NASCAR person? I hear it, and I think Fox is open to kind of listening and trying to make it better. We've just got to give them an opportunity. I think the quality of the broadcasts are really strong, and their investment in technology to make it better has so far been unmatched in the three partners that I've been involved with with ABC, NBC, and Fox since I've been here.
Mm. The thing that I hear the most is the broadcast ability to spread its focus between the front runners and things that are going on the pack.
Yeah.
I would think that that's something that takes a while to figure out the rhythms of a race like that. Have you guys been talking about ways to make sure people understand kind of the race holistically and not just who's in first, second?
Yeah, and I think if you look at, I think maybe even the IndyCar Grand Prix, they did a better job of going back through the field and finding the battles in the field instead of just following the top ones. And I think that's just something that they'll get better at over time. At the same time, things can change so fast. So the last thing you want to do, and our fans will be the first to tell them if they miss a pass for second or the lead. It's like, hey, why were you covering that when you said? So it's, it is a little bit of a balancing act. And I do think they've done a better job of trying to get back through the field and cover some of the things in the back of the pack. I think the IndyCar Grand Prix is one example where I know they really focused on some of the cars further back instead of just who was leading.
So what is your verdict right now on your job? Do you like it?
I get up every day. I get to come to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway or the IndyCar Series, depending on which office I go to. I work in a sport that I love more than just about anything. And, if you'd have told the 10-year-old kid who came to his first 500 with his dad in 1977, just wait, buddy, you won't believe the opportunities that you have. And it's still a dream for me. I pinch myself every day when I come here, even on days when it's challenges and I'm focused more on rules and rule violations and rule interpretations than I am on promoting and selling the series. So I don't know that I'll ever be able to. I don't know that you'll ever be able to have a more perfect job than just the Indianapolis Motor Speedway president. But I'm certainly excited every day to get up. I want to grow the IndyCar series because it is the thing that fuels the Indy 500. So no, I'm really happy and excited, and I think the future's bright.
From a mental health and marriage preservation standpoint, is it sustainable?
That's a great question. I got a text this morning actually from a longtime friend who had been in the sport and left the sport a couple years ago and just is basically traveling. And he said, "Hey, great job in the month of May. Yeah, but don't forget, you can't let your passion for the sport compromise your health." And it's a really good reminder. And it's funny, as I read it to my wife, she said, I tell you that all the time. Why does it take someone else to tell you to get you to, it's the typical marriage conversation that I think we all have in those relationships. And the good news for me is I have a spouse who loves the sport just as much as I do. And I think that makes it easier. So yeah, I think it's sustainable. You certainly couldn't do it without somebody that loved it like I love it.
Yeah. And as you said, you have reorganized your IMS responsibilities a bit to make that less taxing.
Yeah, we've got really great people here at the Speedway. And one of the things that was kind of the least of our worries was we have really great folks here that have done this for several years or more now. They're very customer focused. What makes this work are the 350,000 people that show up here on race day, and we have to think every day, what are we doing to make that customer experience better? Help them be able to continue to tell the stories of why they keep coming back and why they introduce their friends or other generations of their family. So just reorganizing a bit the way that we worked internally here has been the easiest part. The best part about it is it's given a lot of people an opportunity as well to step up and have more responsibility and say, okay, we're a small company, right? So it's not like we have 10,000 employees and all these opportunities for young folks to really quickly go up the ladder. So opening it up a little bit, I think, encouraged a lot of our staff and motivated a lot of our staff to put on this event. So that side of things, I feel good that we've given people an opportunity. I feel like we have people that understand what they need to do here, and they're people that I trust. And I also know that if they're worried about something or a decision, that they can, they're really quick to call and say, hey, we need to make a decision on this. What should we do? But then at the same time, they've got the freedom to make a decision, and if it's the wrong one, we'll figure out why and we'll fix it. Nobody's on trial for making a mistake. We learn by mistakes. We just need to make sure that we're not making a lot of them.
One more question, Doug. I wanted to ask you about lifting the blackout this year. So the grandstands were sold out early, and I don't know if you consider that early, but I think it was announced midway through that week before the race. I'll be honest with you. I hear from a lot of people that ask, why do we need to go through this blackout thing every year? It looks like the race is very healthy. People who want to go are going, and they're selling out. Why is it important that the race be blacked out, to continue to be blacked out in Indianapolis?
Yeah, that's the question that I probably get the most behind what do you do the rest of the year, is, why not just not have it? And it's a fair question, and you can argue both sides of the fence on it. There's the side that we've fallen out on is we have to protect the ability to sell those 232,000 grandstand seats, because that's the engine, the financial engine that doesn't just drive the Speedway, it drives the series. I mean, that's important for us to be able to put the series on the road and go forward. People think it's just cash we're putting in our pocket. At the end of the day, it's the operating revenue that allows us to do 17 races a year and really keep us healthy. So unlike a 60,000 seat arena that gets to sell 9 football games a year, we have one opportunity to get the revenue we need to keep the series going all year round. So that's why it's important, and the thought has been, okay, if we lift it, are we going to lose a bunch of that opportunity? Are we going to get a huge percentage of fans that say, hey, we're not coming anymore? And that impacts the rest of the year. There's the flip side argument, which is if you're live in market, you're going to get people to pay attention to it and that maybe hadn't before, and maybe that encourages them to go. So it's this weird balancing act. And so historically we've said you got to sell out the grandstand seats and we need to sell out GA. That's what happened in 2016 when we lifted the blackout. We sold out both. In 2020, obviously, we lifted because of COVID, same in 2021. And then again in 2024, we lifted at last minute when the rain really delayed us. And we said, you know what? People came here and probably had to go home because they have babysitters or whatever else they have to do. The right thing to do is to thank the community for supporting us. And then this year, when we knew we were closing in on that grandstand sellout, we debated internally and just felt like, look, forget the GA side of things. The GA ticket purchaser in a lot of ways is a young person going to the snake pit that doesn't have the $60 to spend until that week. So we thought, let's not even worry about it and then go the grandstand. So I think we're one step closer to the answer that everybody wants because we sort of eliminated the GA piece. I've heard a lot from older fans who can't come anymore because they can't walk up the steps, or the parking, just getting from parking is too far, and how this is really allowing some of our older fans to really enjoy it. And I've heard from people too this year that said, I've not been before, I'm watching on TV, I want to go. It's just going to be a year-to-year conversation. I hope people, I know it's frustrating to people and it feels archaic, but again, we're a little unique, and I just hope people know that we're trying our best to do the right thing, and I think this year we certainly did.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you visiting with us, and I'm sure we're going to want to get back together sometime soon.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Doug. My thanks again to Doug Boles. And folks, before you get on with the rest of your week, there are a few stories in the latest issue of IBJ I want to draw to your attention. First up, IBJ's Mickey Shuey explains how Pacers Sports and Entertainment and city leaders are trying to take advantage of the team's trip to the NBA Finals. Also in this week's paper, Daniel Lee investigates the blockbuster potential for Eli Lilly and Company's new weight loss drug in pill form. And Daniel Bradley reports on efforts among local governments across central Indiana to meet a deadline for streaming all of their public meetings live. And again, you can find these stories in the latest print edition of IBJ or online at IBJ.com. Now, it is quite a bit easier to access all of the latest business news and all of IBJ's data on Central Indiana's business community and economy if you're a subscriber. We're running a promotion right now that gives you complete access for $1 per week for 3 months, just to get a sense of how valuable and original our content is. Just go to IBJ.com and click on the subscribe button. And thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ podcast. I'm Mason King. Hang in there, everybody. We'll be back again next week.